Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In your industry, so you want to truly understand the competition. So now let us, we've looked at this figure a couple of times. We've seen that technological capabilities are very important. So you would need to, as a science-based venture, identify what are your key technological capabilities. If you have more than one technological capability, what are the typical products or services that you can offer based on that technological capability, and what are the different market applications that you can potentially target. One of the things we had discussed yesterday was, if you have a couple of different markets, how will you choose your first market? And one way to think about markets is, what is the level of competition in each market? One way to assess that, we discussed yesterday, was identifying unmet market needs. There were all of these options, and you could do market research with the users and stakeholders. You could do focus group sessions, potential customer interviews, survey research, lead users, and so on. So each of these initiatives or approaches can be utilized to understand more about your unmet market needs. Now, this is an example of advanced aqueous batteries. So when you search about or try to unlock or identify unmet market needs, your customers are going to tell you things that are important to them. They will say, these are the big problems or problem that I am facing, and this is what I need from any new product. And sometimes they may not give you necessarily a very technical answer. What they will say is, I want a battery that is safer. Or they may say, I want a battery that is low cost. Or they may say, I want a battery that is higher performance, more durable. When you get that feedback from your surveys, from your interviews, that will give you information to go back to the lab, to go back into product development and say, okay, they want a safer battery, they want a higher performance battery or a low cost battery. How can I do that? Right? So here is an example from that paper, which talks about different existing competitors, which is lithium ion batteries, lead acid batteries, knife batteries, all of which have been commercialized, are available on the market, have been available for many, many years. And there is data on their energy density, on their electrolytes, working voltage, cost of the electrolyte, all of these things that are important in this industry or in this space. So if you are developing a battery, you would want to develop a battery that is low cost, safe, high performance. And when you think about performance, it would have higher energy density than these competitors. So you are getting very, very specific. You want something which is over 385 units in energy density. You want something where the cost of electrolyte is ideally lower, right? So you are very quickly getting into very specific set of technical parameters or experimental parameters that you need to achieve to be better than the batteries or competitors that exist in your market. Now, here is the example of things that are under development in that space. What do you see? A couple of them have much higher energy density compared to 385. They have 561 or so. However, the electrolytes are possibly more expensive at the moment. Then you see that these electrolytes or battery technologies have some advantages. Some of these batteries might be safer, but at the same time, they are higher cost. Other batteries are safe and low cost, but their energy density is lower. So, what you realize from your exercise in identifying unmet needs is you went and talked to the people who are stakeholders, who are users, and the users gave you information on what they need. They needed safety. They needed batteries that were low cost. They needed batteries that were higher performance. And you were able to translate those big picture goals into very specific technical parameters where you compare older, existing, competing batteries with the technologies or batteries that you are developing yourself. So one of the goals of competitor analysis is to get to this level of specificity on the parameters on which you are better than your competitors' products. Because your customer will tell you, I want something safer, I want something low cost, I want high performance. How do you translate these broader labels into the technical parameters and specificities? Right? And not all parameters are equally important. In some market applications, safety is primary, right? So if you are putting a battery inside a human body, perhaps safety is paramount, right? But if it is not something implanted in the human body, beyond safety, you want performance to last and durability to be there for a very long time, right? So in different market applications for the same technology, some aspects will be more important, some aspects will be less important. So these batteries that are commercialized and these that are under development, what you see is there are some that are good safety and low cost. There are others that are good safety, high capacity, low cost. And there is the last one, the electrolytic battery, which is good safety, low cost, high energy density. Right? So all of these possibilities exist. Now, if you are a startup that is working on electrolytic batteries, your immediate competitors might be other people, other startups, other labs developing electrolytic batteries. But you are also competing against people who are working with zinc batteries or other batteries, right? So you are in that space. There are other related and substitute products that you should be better than. And when you say, how are you going to be better? There are these specific technical parameters that you are seeking to achieve. Now, in practice, what does that mean? It means that you came up with an idea, you developed it into prototype stage, you went to the market, you got some feedback. The feedback that you got sometimes or in many cases will mean that you go back into the lab. So the process is not linear. The process is not as simple as, well, I start in the lab, then I talk to people. What people tell me, I listen, but I keep on making what I already made and hope that it will sell. Instead, what will most commonly happen, and I say this from experience, is when you reach out to the market, it is very difficult, one, to get people to talk to you. Two, when you talk to them, in most cases, you will find that people may not be very interested. Then if they are interested, sometimes what they will give as feedback is that what you are doing is good, but this is solving a problem that is a small problem. What we want, what our biggest problem is something else or something related. And so you will, in many instances, have to reformulate, modify what you are doing, right? You're still moving forward because you got some feedback and therefore you will be better prepared. There are enough and more examples in technology history where even the largest companies have not done enough market research. They make products, market products, and then find that nobody is interested. So it's not, so I definitely don't want to give you the assumption that existing large companies and other businesses are perfect in what they do. There are enough and more examples, even from the largest companies in just about every industrial sector, where you will find, if you look at their product development timelines, you will find in a 20, 30, 40-year period, they had at least a couple of massive failures where they thought that there will be some fantastic new product and instead nobody was interested. And this is after spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. So market research is critical. Early market research before you start your venture is only going to help you. So if there is one thing that you take from this course, it is how much work you need to do before you start your venture and how much connection you should have with the users of your product, with stakeholders in your space before you start your venture. Any single hour that you invest in that kind of work, beyond the technical work that you will do in your lab, every single hour that you do in market research, in talking to people before you start your venture, will pay itself back in many fold once your venture starts, because you will be so much better prepared. So that's why the process as a whole moves back and forth between lab and market and refinement, and then you realize that, oh, there is this capability that I need that I currently don't have on my team, which means that I have to find some team member or some mentor or some advisor who has this capability. Advisors with those kind of backgrounds will be able to unlock their own networks and connect you to people that will help you to better understand the value chain. In many instances, what you will also find is that these mentors will be able to provide you with connections to financing from their own trusted networks. Many times investors take a strong look at what is your background, your experience of your core team, but also who are the key people who are advisors on your boards and who are your scientific advisory board members. All of these are really important signals of credibility that help unlock value for your venture. Here is another example or another way to compare your product with that of competition. So this is a bioadhesive ultrasound for long-term continuous imaging of diverse organs. Now in this case, the argument being made is that, well, any kind of scans that you do is at one point in time and there are changes happening continuously in the human body. Perhaps it will be better if there was some way to monitor through, in imaging terms, a patient over time. That then gets to, well, how long can you keep someone in that scanner? People don't like being in there. Instead, is there another way you can have a wearable ultrasound which does imaging? So you have some sort of a patch near whichever organ you want to image. It has to be bioadhesive on the skin. And there is some modality by which it is able to image, store that image, high enough resolution. And now the latest I was looking at, it seems like they are trying to make sure that wirelessly that can be transferred. So there are people working on that. How are they comparing it? They are saying, well, other imaging solutions are at one point in time. There are some competitors which are able to maintain continuous imaging for 5 minutes. There is someone else, some other company which is able to do it for 5 hours. What we do with bioadhesive ultrasound, which is the company with the stars, is able to do it for 48 hours continuously. So this is an example of another science-based venture where one of the unique aspects or technological capabilities that they have is that they are able to offer continuous imaging over a much longer duration than competitors. And they are able to do it at a high resolution compared to competitors. The resolution and the time are the two most important parameters or technical parameters in this space. Note that they are not talking about cost. Cost is perhaps a secondary factor. Another important thing is, what this also means is patients can perhaps go home. And so there is a difference in the amount of time that specialists need to be there. Otherwise, when you are in the machine, there is the time of the doctor, the time of the specialist is also a cost per hour. Right? In this case, that kind of cost is limited or controlled. So there are ways in which technologies can be assessed. And where is this kind of information coming from? So typically I get a question is, well, I don't know who my competitors are. Where will I find that information? So typically if you are a scientist, engineer, what you will know, what you will understand is, if you are working in a lab, you will in most cases know which are the other labs in your country doing similar work. You will have some, well, it's in this institute, there are these 5 people who are doing very similar work like mine. Same way, you might know what are the other labs across the world doing that kind of work. You will know what are the papers that come out from those labs. You can know, because patent data is publicly available, if you know the names of those authors from those labs, you can track what are the patents that those authors are co-inventors on. Right? From those publications and patents, you can infer at what period, what technological capabilities are they building in your domain. You can also infer from just their names, are they involved in any startups? You do a search, you will find that from this university, we have this great announcement from this research team, they are forming this startup. So what do you know now? You know the publications, you know the authors, you know the inventors, you know the patents, all of which will give you the technical information that you need. In various ways, they will describe their experiments. They will say, well, this is what we did. This is how we made that substrate. They will give some information. So you'll get some estimates. If there are startups, sometimes they will say, this is what our startup is focusing on. These are our products and services. From their website, you will see these are the things under development. This is our pipeline. These are our advisors. All of this information is publicly available for you to collect in your space. And therefore, when you combine all that information, you will get a sense of, well, in my domain, who are my true competitors, what are the startups that I'm competing with today, which lab looks like they will have a startup in 2-3 years. You can anticipate some of those things. For some of the ventures that already exist, some of the larger companies that already exist, you will have for public companies, you will have the SEC files and you will have their annual reports, which will say this is what the management is thinking, this is what they are doing, this is the partnerships that they have, this is the investment and funding that they have raised over the last 5-7 years, Series A, Series B, and so on. And this is how they are planning to use those funds. So it is not, I'm not saying that you will get complete information on everything, but there will be information on startups that you can know, that is both pre-formation and post-formation. So you may not get all of the financing data for privately held startups. You will get more financing data on publicly held firms. Sometimes some startups will divulge. They want to see, the thing is, startups want people to know about them. They want to give the impression, and hopefully all of that is right also, that they are making progress, so that more and more people are eager to invest in them, right? So unless there is some confidentiality clause, there will be times when the university or lab or somebody will say, well, we have raised X million dollars and so on. So there will be press releases. Sometimes they will say, we have got a large sum of money. They won't disclose the amount, but they might say who they are partnering with. So there will be some snippets of information that you can collect even when they are privately held. One source is sometimes the founders or co-founders give interviews and somebody asks a question. And then on a YouTube clip or in some newspaper article or some industry magazine or in some conference on one side, you will get some info that, yeah, it was in the low hundreds or whatever, right? It might just be one phrase. You will get some estimate or some idea. So I'm not saying that this is perfect, but what I'm saying is if you dig deep enough, if you look carefully enough, you will find information. It's not zero. Okay. So all of this to say that when you are assessing competition, when you are talking to stakeholders, end users, you will find what are the parameters that are important in your industry. In this case, what's important is resolution of the image and the timing duration that you have for continuous imaging. These are the two most important factors for this market application. For some other market application, there might be some other factors, not necessarily this one. But for this application, in this market, these two factors are quite important. So the question for you would be, when you are a startup and you have a product targeting one particular market application, going back to this figure, so you have a technology capability, you chose to make a product, one product, because startups don't do many things, they try to focus initially, and that product you sent to target one market application. In that market application, what are the factors that are important? Is it low cost? Is it safety? Is it high performance? Is it axial resolution? Is it duration? What is that factor that is important to succeed in that market? And then, where are you on that parameter? Where is your competition on that parameter? If you are the best on both parameters, excellent. If you are not, Then you go back to the lab and work to that goal. Yeah, so in that case, what I would suggest is then you really focus on this part, which is in your talks with market research with users and stakeholders, what did they say that they needed, right? If you don't have clear competition or you don't have clear parameters, ultimately your goal is that it should solve the problem of a customer base, of a set of people. So if you have gone and talked to people, and like I said earlier in the morning, that when do you stop? How many interviews do you do? How many people do you talk to? So one way to assess that is when the answers that you get are answers that you have heard before, when no new answers come, and everybody says they want safety, they want low cost, they want high performance, and you don't have any new parameter emerging, that means you have talked to many people or most people, and there is mostly you are well covered. But if you haven't talked to enough people, you might be thinking of high performance and not thinking about low cost and safety. And so you will not be addressing most of the market, you will be addressing only a small niche, and your product development may be incomplete. So all of this process, it will take a long time. It is not easy to go out of the lab. I have personally talked to so many scientists and engineers who are so much more comfortable inside the lab than outside the lab, who are so much more comfortable presenting and talking about their research in their own disciplines conferences, but not to non-specialists. That is a challenge. How do you explain your work to somebody who is not from your discipline? And they will say, what is the meaning? What are you saying? Right? I don't understand the terms. How do you translate your technical expertise into layman's language and then convince them that it is meaningful, this is really important work? Because when you're talking to investors and financiers, there are times when they will say, I don't understand your technical terminology. And so one of the things that we train when we work with our scientists and engineers is how do we get them to move away from their disciplinary acronyms and labels and convey what is the core, what is the essence of that opportunity? Is it better to say I am curing one particular kind of cancer than saying I am doing this treatment for this refractory kind of cancer using this particular modality? And so there will be people who will not understand that. Instead, if you say that I met a child who had this particular form of cancer and I am a scientist who's trying to solve that, you are not being incorrect, you are not being less accurate, you are just translating what you are doing to an audience so that they understand what you do. They are not interested in that specific nuance. And so as a scientist or engineer, how do you train yourself to convey the quality of your work? So we looked at this figure and we realized that for any particular market application, there will be a set of factors that are more important, that are less important. This can then be assessed and compared vis-a-vis competition. And the level of specificity here is the CEO viewpoint making a point that I thought I'll highlight is when you talk about specificity, it's not saying that, well, there are car manufacturers and cars have bumpers and door handles and dashboards. All of it is made of plastic, right? So I just have to make some plastic and car manufacturers should buy it. It's not as simple as that. They will want very specific grades of plastic. They will want plastic that has specific technical properties. They will want plastic that is very light, but at the same time very strong, right? So all of these will be translatable into very specific technical parameters. All of this to say, automakers don't buy plastic as a commodity. A milk carton's plastic is different from the door handle plastic that we needed. There will be very specific requirements. They buy certain types of plastic for certain purposes. I have had occasion to work with somebody doing just that. Designing from an academic lab plastics for use as car bumpers. And those plastics, the focus was how to make those plastics as light as possible while making them stronger than the current bumpers, so that they could work in any part of the world, whether hot or cold, without breaking or being brittle. So these are all technical things that the person who was doing a PhD or a postdoc in that lab was spending multiple years refining it. And the hope was once they do that, they might license that technology to an OEM manufacturer. And so they may not make those bumpers themselves, they will license that intellectual property and somebody else will manufacture and supply it to the car company, which will assemble it, it will go to a dealer, and then you will buy it. Now, do you see that process playing out? It takes a couple of years. You need to understand what that process is like. So, this is what I want all of you to focus on for the next time, for the time that we have in this class now. This is an example of a competitive matrix that you should develop for your own product or service. The first column beyond the factors is your company or your startup. The factors here, quality, price, packaging, safety, these are just random things that I have put. In your industry, it might be axial resolution. In your industry, it might be duration of continuous imaging. You have to understand in your industry for your product, what factors does the customer want you to have? Does the customer want a product that is lower cost? Does the customer want a product that is more durable? Does the customer who is a business want a product that is smaller in form factor? So if you have in an iPhone or many of these smartphones, sometimes they want to add more and more cameras. Sometimes they want all the chips or components to be as small as possible. So the quality or the resolution should increase and the form factor should decrease. Sometimes heating is a problem. So they want to have batteries that are very durable, that hold charge for a very long period of time, that are fast charging. All of this should fit inside the case, and at the same time, it should not overheat. It should be safe. It should not burst when you are charging it. It should not discharge quickly. All of these are technical factors. So what you need to understand and know and find out from literature, from industry experts, from customers, potential customers in your spaces, what are those factors that are important in your space? And for those factors, where does your product or your company currently stand? And who are your closest competitors, C1, C2, C3? And what is their performance on these factors, performance factors or parameters? So does that make sense? Is that logical? Any questions on this? Because it's not as simple as saying we are better than competition. You have to demonstrate, give evidence as scientists and engineers as how are you better, on what aspect are you better. Is the thing that you are better at needed by the market? Do they want that feature? So this is the essence of competitor analysis. Is for your closest competitors, how are you better? And it is possible. And So sometimes people come back and say, we are better at everything. That is unusual. In most cases, what will happen is your competitor will be good at something, you will be good at something else, and then you will try to become better in some area, as the case may be. It is rare. It is rare. I don't say it is impossible that you are best at all of the factors, then you should start your company. But if not, then you have the lab. And you improve, you refine, you build up your intellectual property, right? So this is the part that we try to get everybody to think is, okay, so for your product, for your technological capability, for one particular market application, in that market application, what is needed? Sometimes it is integration capability. I touched upon modules, right? So sometimes people are buying packages. Sometimes it is the ability to integrate. Sometimes it is, well, my product is biodegradable. My competitors' products are polluting. They are not biodegradable. Sometimes, for example, say car bumpers or something, not only is my product lighter and stronger, it is more fire resistant. And the competitors don't even talk about fire resistance. So we offer something that is a new feature. Nobody else has. Another layer to it might be not just saying that the bumper is strong, but saying that the bumper is better during crashes. So the bumper might get destroyed, but the car doesn't. But the car has minimal damage. That's a very big factor, right? As a car owner, you would much prefer to replace the bumper than replace the car, right? All of these are extremely important aspects. And all cars go under crash testing. Only then they come on the market. So there are regulatory factors there. So if you go in as a startup and say, well, I have come up with a plastic that is so much better, then there is a strong reason for automotive companies to work with you. You don't have to run after partnerships. They might run after you. What I will say is, you want to be the best you can. So if you are 300% better than them, it is excellent. If you are 5% better than them, that is perhaps not good enough. Because what will happen, see, one of the things that I said in one of the earlier sessions is, people don't like change. So if you are only 5% better, then your competitor's client may not have enough incentive to change. They will say, well, yeah, that person is not good enough. You are a little bit better, but not enough for us to change all our agreements, to change all our contracts, and to move away from one partnership to someone else. So when we talk about improvements, you want them to be significant improvements, as significant as possible. Sometimes it is a whole new factor that is really important that you knew from the customers. You remember the example of PFAS that I gave you, right? So no one else was thinking about PFAS in fuel cells and membranes. And so one of them, they realized, oh, actually what we are doing is PFAS free. And that is a unique feature. None of the other competitors can claim that. And that has patents and intellectual property behind it. So for others to get there will take a couple of years. In that couple of years, you can sign all the agreements, you can build up the partnerships, you can build the kind of networks, hopefully like Monsanto someday, and then you are strong enough that others cannot easily compete with you, because you have done all of the IP work in the lab. You have a product performance factor that is very different from competition, that is valued by the market, that is needed and recommended by regulatory authorities. And so people cannot easily compete with you. And therefore, when they cannot compete easily with you, you have something called a sustainable competitive advantage. Over time, you will make more and more revenues because people cannot come close. Other competitors cannot come close. And it all links back to that technological capability that you hold. What is that capability and how can you mine that capability to get to this sustainable competitive advantage? In the case of a company like Genentech, it's their intellectual property. Intel, high quality. Medtronic, product innovation. Pfizer, sales method. So other people might be developing products, other startups. Pfizer might be acquiring them. The startups don't have the sales team, the networks, the contracts, and everything. So the startups cannot succeed on their own. Therefore, they get acquired by this large company. This large company is focused mostly on their sales, and they acquire the IP. Who has taken all the risk? Who has done most of the hard work? It is the startup. And then the startup gets acquired for millions of dollars. And then it's the big company that has the partnership with the governments, with the health authorities, and they will use their sales team and sales methods to sell this. To connect with insurance companies and payers saying this should be the pricing for healthcare products. So, anyone would like to take a shot at, for your sector, what factors are most important? So just give me one sentence on what your product is or can be, and for your sector, what do you think are the important factors that all your competitors are working towards and that you are working towards? Anyone would like to take a shot?
For the fintech industry, it would be more of reliability and ability to be dependable on the product that we are making. So things can't go wrong at any point of time.
Yeah.
So
one way I would get you to refine it would be, how do you define reliability? How do you measure reliability? Is there a metric for reliability? Reliability can have multiple levels. Perhaps one is, how many operations can your server handle on the back end, versus reliability of an app so that the app doesn't crash on the phone, right? So reliability to me is an umbrella term with a couple of different metrics from the user side, from the backend side, and so you would want to perhaps consider something like that. The other thing that might be important for at least some customers is cybersecurity. Now, more and more with all the frauds and things happening is, okay, we want something that is reliable, but reliability, does it also mean that there is some level of encryption and protection, and there is some level of machine learning and fraud assessment that you offer? That means that people who are putting in money or taking in money, they feel that the organization is supporting them or backing them. Or you find that your competitors have a track record that people say that, oh, we've lost some money, and the competitors don't follow up on those complaints. You have a strong complaint redressal system because you have built a strong IT backbone. Then you might say that, what is your technological capability? Is your capability on the finance side, on the regulatory side, or on the app development side, or on the IT security side of things, right? Where is your unique capability when there are at least 3 of your closest fintech companies who are doing perhaps exactly the same thing or very similar to what you do, right? So you want to be more and more and more precise and specific, and try to get as close to some kind of, if you can get to a quantitative metric like energy density for the other one, which was like, well, 385 for one particular kind of battery, 561 for another kind of battery. So if there is some very specific metric that can further clarify and define reliability or cybersecurity case, all of that.
It could be track their progress as well. Yeah, this is one of the, we can reduce this manual effort from that side, from their side. Yeah.
your solution is targeted towards, say, neurodivergent children or adults. In that case, there might be some metrics which are to do with the usage of your product itself, which might be engagement level metrics. Are people using it? Are people using it, or the children or adults using it the way you anticipated them to use it? Then the question is, are there any metrics for caregivers? Now, caregivers is again some sort of an umbrella term. It can include parents, it can include other family members, it can include school staff, it can include psychological assessment people, it can include people from health authorities or medical staff. All of these may need different types of data in different formats, and that format should connect and be integrated in some form with their existing software or GUIs, which might be from some other company, right? One of the big challenges in healthcare settings across the world is that many of these softwares are semi-independent, and one software does not talk to another software. I have personally connected with board members of large hospitals who say that even in one single hospital, there might be 10,000 plus independent pieces of software databases that don't talk to each other. Which is one reason where sometimes when you go to a hospital, you are filling the same form with the same information 3 times or 5 times at different desks or at different counters, right? So that is a pervasive problem. So if you are collecting, so there is a device ergonomic aspect, which is how heavy it is, all of those kind of things. There is the user engagement aspect of it. There is the metrics and assessment aspect of it. There is the output aspect and who will use that output in what format. And then you assess your solution, comparing it with competition and seeing, well, where is the competition missing? They haven't even thought of that, and you have thought and you have designed for it. Right? And software design does take a long time. It is expensive. And so if you build up a lead, if you build up trust in the user base, and there is a clear way for people to see that, yes, it is making a difference. There is one thing that you are collecting metrics. It is another thing to tell the parent of a child on the autism spectrum that the parent gave an iPad and they saw the child behavior improving. If you get to that, that is the gold standard. Beyond, it's like if you say that, yes, you give this, there is a demonstrable difference in engagement. Instead of walking around the room and not being interested, the child is sitting and doing a particular task for some period of time. If you do that, and that will come with a lot of that unmet need assessment, where you talk, you prototype, and then you share it with these families, and you see how people are using it, take it back into the lab and refine it. I gave the example of Claris Healthcare yesterday, and they work with aging population, and they have spent that kind of amount of time for a very different market segment. So it takes time, but if you do it well, you will unlock tremendous value, and beyond the value or profits to be made, you will change people's lives.
So it's not about our product, but when I was interacting with one of the hospitals and trying to say like, okay, because they are our partners and how we are going to develop this, right? One of the things that I got from them, which I felt was very valuable, was that across, especially India, and also true for other countries, is that most of them are targeting towards how many patients I take care over particular daytime, so which also turns into profit, but also as a measure of advertising. So like, this is the best place, you get treated within like 2 minutes, and like we have the top doctors in that, and which is great. But the problem is, if you want to keep being at that, you have to poach doctors who are good at other institutions to make your institution continue to be good. So the institution which we are partnering, they say like, okay, we have been in this rat race forever, and that's not working. I mean, not working in the sense like, we need to think different. So they have started measuring factors that change the outcome internally, and focus more efforts in terms of training. So even the junior most doctor that comes out of that institution is really, really superior to any of the doctors or trainees who will go to any other institution. So I'm not running behind the super specialists in that institution, but my student is going to be the super specialist, right? So, and even when that person gets taken over by another institution, he's going to start recommending like, hey, go to that institution, get trained, and those people are going to be better going 5 years down, 10 years down. They are going to be a good client for your students. So your value keeps going up, even though you're not making that metric of like, I am serving like 20,000 people per year. So it's like, it was very different way of looking at things, and it was like amazing, like, wow, like true. I mean, which is so it was like, I'm not even looking at the same parameters other people are looking. I'm totally different set of parameters, and I like casting my own path to get to that level, right? Like,
Yes, and yeah, you will have, and like you have the Aravind Eye Hospital, and you have at least a couple of hospital chains as well as individual hospitals that have a unique value proposition or approach in that they are targeting, again, social impact. So like one of the things that I said was, when you talk to many of these scientists and engineers and doctors who are thinking of starting ventures or have started ventures, in many instances, profit or money was not the only factor. In fact, that is perhaps the second, third, or fifth factor. The most important thing that drives them is some personal factor, or it is that they want to do something for society. In their daily work, they see every day one problem that nobody is solving. So one day they say, okay, if nobody is doing it, I want to do it. Or sometimes it is philanthropic agencies, which are those patient investors and provide that capital, and they might have some orientation towards, well, we have this funding, we want to do this for society. And so when you have some of that kind of funding or some of that kind of leadership in teams, then that gives you a little bit more of that flexibility to do something very you also have examples like Jaipur Food and others where uh, the, the intent is not to charge the highest price. The intent is to solve the problems for the most number of people. And India in that regard is we have that ethos, and that social impact is paramount beyond just the profitability aspect of what we want to do. And the other part of it, linking back to this figure that I talk about and show, is that when you are thinking about attracting and mentoring the founding team, you will find more often than not that people will join your startup or venture for the vision that you have, for the impact that you will create, rather than, well, this is just the next profit-making opportunity. So you will find typically high quality founders, they will like the challenge of working towards something that can change society positively. So that impact is also one way to attract co-founders, or if you have a couple of people and you want to try and, well, who do I want to choose and work with? Some of that alignment sometimes is because, well, we both believe, or our team believes in social impact. Of course, there will be some revenues to be made, and that's needed when you've got investment and growing and scaling. but the core of the entity or the company is we want to solve a problem in society. That's what drives us. And at times that may mean that you choose not to get acquired. You might get an offer somewhere, you're phenomenally successful, and some large company says, well, we would like to acquire you. And I know of companies and startups. I know of scientists who have started companies because their students were not getting faculty positions. Because for the hundreds of PhDs that come out, or thousands of PhDs that come out, the number of high quality faculty positions are only, like in Canada, about 90% of PhDs will not get faculty. And so in many instances, these professors, these scientists, senior people, they will start ventures. One of the motivations is, well, I want to make sure that my students have a way to continue this work. A lot of public funding has been spent in training them, and they are really good people and working hard. We want to keep them in Canada. We want to give them an opportunity. And what better way to start a venture to solve a social problem using the scientific expertise of these highly skilled. So money is a less important factor. Therefore, there can be, so a very long answer to a short comment is that there can be other factors, but the case has to be made. And for those kind of factors to work, you need patient capital. You need some source or some people who are saying, yep, we will let you try this for the next 7 years or 10 years. Right? Sometimes it is like the Tata Trusts, or sometimes it is those kind of agencies that have a really social mindset, social impact, and positive social impact. Offer these kind of supports and funds. Any other thoughts, any comments? Anyone wants to try their competitive matrix? So I will have a couple of questions. Before I get into the factors, what I would want to understand is, what is your market size? Like, it seems like you're talking about a very specific case, a very specific procedure or task to be done. So what, from an investment or a business perspective, what I would be curious about, well, how much of a business is it? How big? Like, are there many people facing that disease? Are there many people who need that kind of testing? Or is it like a niche or an orphan drug kind of a situation? So that is it's sort of a chicken and egg situation, right? So the business case is more challenging, because at the moment, if you look at the way things are being done, it would seem like it's a very tiny market. So that is why competitors are not entering that space, because it is perhaps not worth that effort. And you are specializing on doing something like that. So you would want to make it as painless and as easy as possible for clinicians in remote locations to prescribe. So you would want to talk to those clinicians and try and understand why they are not prescribing. And you talk to enough people, they will probably say, well, it takes too long a time. I don't know if there is somebody who will do the test properly. I don't know if I'll get the test result in time. It is possible that in really remote locations, I don't know if the patient will come back to me. And so the test result will be here, but the patient will come back after 2 months, right? So you want to try and work towards technical parameters, which are like, well, I can do it fast. I can do it maybe in the setting that it's there. It doesn't have to go anywhere, and I can do it at a price. Then you might open up a market which your competitors are not considering. But by that time, you would have built the trust with the clinicians, which hopefully should help you. Because in healthcare settings, one of the other things is people are really not keen to change. So if they get used to, this is one thing that we use, this is the one procedure, this is the one test, with this, they will probably. So if you give me that information, the next question I would ask is, from your platform, what is the most challenging disease? Or from a patient or healthcare perspective, like, what is the most severe disease that you could diagnose early enough? And early diagnosis, would that help the child recover faster, or there can be some treatments then that really improve the lifespan and case as well. So it's possible that what you have is a platform or a testing platform which can be targeted towards multiple diseases. Right now you are targeting towards one disease, but there are three others that you could look at. It is possible one of those three others might be more of a bigger market or market opportunity. It might be more profitable, in which case you might want to say start off there, generate some revenues, then go into this more social impact one, using the revenues you generated. All of this will take time, as we know, but that could be one way to look at it. And I'm sure that if it is profitable, you will have competitors there.
Market appears to be small, and ideally a larger number of people need to be tested, but we are not testing because of the cost or time or other parameters. Now, the most important factor that to be determined before even jumping into it is what percentage of the people not tested are actually being positive, because that is going to be, because once you actually jump in and show that, hey, you're literally missing 50% of them because their clinical symptoms appear a little later, so you're not actually catching that population. So you're not only catching like 10% when 50% is being let go. Now, the moment you show that, publish it or present at a conference, all the people who were previously your competitors who are not even planning to be there will have like a dozen people sitting right there to just do this test, because they know like their product is there, it's ready, tested, and they know this is happening. So they'll have a person sitting right there, like they don't, like that person's only job is to collect the samples. So that is a risk that needs to be assessed. And you might want to like not even publish that, like get that setup done before you publish the paper, because otherwise you're going to be like swamped, because those guys are embedded and they are like incumbent people, powerful. So you won't be able to fight them out.
What's the motivation? Do you want the testing to be made available widely, or do you want to be the one doing the testing? And three, do you want to, perhaps the people, suppose you, out of public interest, you divulge all this information and somebody else jumps in, and yet they charge a higher price for whatever reason, and you still know that you can do it at a lower price. So all of these things as strategies you would want to consider and plan. And that is why, again, I emphasize and again, the amount of planning you need to do and the amount of connecting with stakeholders and actual clinicians, figure out what will unlock and drive this value, so that when you finally form your startup, you know all what you can expect from the market and you are ready. So is it your goal to be the startup that provides this testing at the lowest possible price yourself, or you want to step back as a researcher and say, well, I want to make this information available publicly so that somebody else does that job, and at the end of the day the people get tested, right? So those are the kind of things you may want to assess and decide. And it also links to your intellectual property position around some of these things. Is you have strong IP yourself? Does that allow you to get these people to license the technology from you? And so all of those aspects can come. Anyone else wants to try? Factors for your product, your category? Tired? No thoughts? Okay. So the other thing that I will show you, this was the last slide. We already talked about sustainable competitive advantage. What I would want you to think about is, who are your closest competitors? How is your product or service better than your closest competitors' offerings? What will be your sustainable competitive advantage over a long period of time? Even when your competitors know your product, when your product is on the market, they know how it performs, they know what pricing you might be providing it. Even when they know all that, and competitors are already on the market, they have their sales team, they have their connections with doctors, then how will you continue to survive and make profit? There has to be something unique in what you do. What is that uniqueness that you have? So I will get you to focus on that. Meanwhile, what I will also do now is I will try to share another slide.